Two really traditional teams, and OKR has been one of the best teams this year in this league. They've been very consistent. Finished second in this first division competition, but Featherstone Rovers come with that late surge. And what an absolutely superb second half performance, tackling performance last week at Dewsbury. That's earned them this semi-final spot. Hopefully we'll be seeing Featherstone Rovers at Huddersfield next week. But I'm sure OKR will have a lot to say about that. OKR going to kick off first then. Excellent crowd at this new Craven Park this afternoon. So it's Wayne Parker who gets this game underway then. A deep kick, it's taken by Gary Price, and Gary Price will run this in first for Rovers. Nerves already here. It's no Craven Park this afternoon. It's Richard Slater, but OKR up quickly to bring Richard Slater down. So Ty Fallon's kicking early in that tackle count, trying to get Rovers playing in OKR's half at field, and it's taken by Mike Fletcher. This long-serving OKR fullback, he's brought down. So Richard Smith, of course, used to play for Rovers last year on loan. Now he plays for OKR on that left wing, and he's brought down. So Keith Beecham here offloads it to number 3 there, Rob Danby. Rob Danby's brought down. So Wayne Parker, Stanley Jean. Stanley Jean needs the danger man of Stanley Jean. But Sean Ewing, that's superb tackling by Sean Ewing, getting over there to bring Stanley Jean down. And so this is number 11, Andy Smith. Andy Smith to run it in, he's brought down. So Wayne Parker looking for a kick out at top, but Ty Fallon's in a good position there. It's under his eyes, but Ty Fallon takes that ball well. Ty Fallon's drinking back inside. Ty Fallon's had a little problem there with it's under his eyes, but eventually it came good for Featherstone Rovers, and this is Steve Collins from Axon half-back looking for a gap. Trying to duck under tackles there, but he's brought down. Chico Jackson then. Been in a lot of local derby battles as Chico Jackson, of course, played for so many years with Hull FC, but that's a bad mistake by Richard Chapman. Obviously nerves there by the Featherstone Rovers hooker, Richard Chapman, just a little knock on there. And that'll give OKR the ascendancy here. And so it's Wayne Parker feeds the scrum, it's out to Stanley Jean. Stanley Jean looking for a gap, looking to run through Jamie Coventry. Jamie Coventry just managed to drag him to the floor. Quick play ball, Andy Dannett though, Andy Dannett's in front, so quite wisely Howard Hill keeps over at ball, looks for a gap, he's brought down, so OKR on the attack here. Andy Dannett this time it is, Andy Dannett runs spot line, but Featherstone Rovers keep him out. Wayne Parker then. So Wayne Parker going foot line there, he's brought down. So this is Andy Smith going foot line, Andy Smith jinks back inside. Just dealt short, this is the last tackle there, can Rovers keep him out here? Wayne Parker to number 13, Chris Childs, and he gives it back inside, but that's excellent tackling by Featherstone Rovers. Jamie Coventry there and Neil Lowe there at that tackling, that's good tackling by Featherstone Rovers. So Steve Collins looking for a gap, Steve Collins jinking in and out, he's brought down. So Danny Baker then, and that's going to be a penalty against OKR. OKR impeding Steve Collins that play the ball, so that's a penalty to Featherstone Rovers. So it's Richard Chapman, this penalty gives it to Chico Jackson. Chico Jackson runs it in, he's brought down. Richard Chapman then gives it to Stuart Dickens, other prop forward this afternoon for Rovers. Stuart Dickens halfway through, he's brought down though. Richard Chapman back inside there, that's a good ball to Gary Price. Gary Price still going, that's a good run by Gary Price. He's brought down. So Featherstone Rovers on the attack then. Steve Collins then to Ty Fallons, back inside to Ty Fallons, then it comes to Sean Ewing, but that's good tackling by LK at that time. So Richard Chapman will go himself. Richard Chapman from acting half back, sees the gap. Straightens up, but that's good tackling once again by LKR. This is its last tackle. Ty Fallon's in that big upper under. Crossfield kick, hangs in air. Fortunately there it rebounds to Wayne Parker, and that's going to be a attack from under OKR's 25-yard line. That's a good attack by Featherstone Rovers. Excellent kick by Ty Fallons. Featherstone Rovers have got an absolute excellent following this afternoon here. I can see them over in that shed singing the hearts out, foot lads. Just hope that Featherstone Rovers don't let them down. It's Neil Lowe, pick that ball up. Neil Lowe runs it in. I'm sure Rovers will, if they let him down, it won't be through lack of trying as Danny Baker goes through blind side. Danny Baker sees a gap looking for Cal Pratt as he did last week. He's brought down Richard Chapman then to Chico Jackson. Chico Jackson, that's good tackling by LKR though. Richard Chapman then to Ty Fallons. Ty Fallons to Jamie Coventry. Jamie Coventry looking for runners to Richard Chapman, back to Ty Fallons, but Ty Fallons just couldn't take that ball that time from Richard Slater, so that's going to be scrum down to LKR. So at the stage of this game then, Featherstone Rovers had one attacking that 25-yard line and so have LKR, but it's a Stanley Jean, he's the danger man. Looks to get round outside, but Danny Baker and Richard and Jamie Coventry slid over well there. So Chris Charles on the run, he's brought down. So Mike Dixon acting half back, he gives it to number 10 Alex Thompson, he's brought down. Quick play at ball. Andy down on a run, but that's good tackling by Richard Chapman. So it's back to Wayne Parker, that kick downfield, and that's a good kick by Wayne Parker. Steve Collins just watched it bounce into touch. We're not taking any stupid risks there. Steve Collins just says, fair enough, let it bounce in touch, we'll have this scrum. And so this game started as I think it means to go on. It's going to be very tight this afternoon at Oakhaven Park. Of course, Featherstone Rovers haven't beat LKR this year. They've had 3 defeats for Featherstone Rovers. So that's a bad mistake there by Featherstone Rovers. Going blindside there, that play of the ball, and LKR manages to drag Rovers into touch, so it'll be LKR's head and feed. It's good tackling that by LKR. So Wayne Parker's feed this scrum. It's out to LKR, Wayne Parker at that base. To Stanley Jean. Stanley Jean will look for a gap back inside to Paul Fletcher. Paul Fletcher's brought down, so LKR on the attack here. Stanley Jean will go himself, he'll look for a gap, but that's good tackling by Richard Chapman. Helped out by Gary Price. Andy Dannett charges to that line. But Rovers back in full there again, but LKR on the attack here. Wayne Parker. Little kick through by Wayne Parker. But that's good work by Steve Collins. Just managed to get over and just scrape her hand away, or that was a certain try by Wayne Parker. So Wayne Parker, a lot of injury problems this year for LKR scrum half, but showing none there as he kicked that ball through. Sensible little chip, and Featherstone Rovers under pressure. He'll drop out by Ty Fallons under sticks. Taken by Chris Charles. Chris Charles will run this back, but Rovers move up quickly. Alex Thompson then at that charge. Alex Thompson, that's a good drive by Alex Thompson. Mike Dixon then, he'll look for a gap himself. Mike Dixon back inside to Stanley Jean. Stanley Jean offloads it there. LKR still on the attack with Mike Dixon. Alex Thompson at play ball to Stanley Jean. Stanley Jean looks for runners outside, back inside to Chris Charles. Chris Charles, that's good tackling by Rovers. Get with Neil Lowe that time of a tackle. Excellent tackling by Neil Lowe. But Mike Dixon sees the gap, goes himself, just held short. This is last tackle then for LKR. Just short of Featherstone Rovers line. Wayne Parker to Chris Charles. Chris Charles, good long ball out to Keith Beecham. Keith Beecham steps back inside, looks to get ball away. Well, that's good defence by Featherstone Rovers, sliding over correctly there. Cal Pratt's come up with ball. So Carl Pratt to Danny Baker on the run. Good tackling by LKR though. Chico Jackson. It's good tackling though by LKR once again there. So Richard Slater looks for a gap back inside, but LKR once again moving up quickly. This is last tackling. Good tackling this by LKR, so Richard Chapman kicks ball downfield, but Mike Fletcher in perfect position there to catch that ball and gets away from Carl Pratt, but he can't get away from Neil Lowe and rest at Rovers defensive men moving up. He's brought down just over halfway line then. Wayne Parker then to number 2 there, Keith Beecham. He's brought down as Keith Beecham. Alex Thompson then looks for the gap, gets past Chico Jackson, but Featherstone Rovers that time moving up quickly. Andy Dannett on a run, Andy Dannett looks for the gap. So Wayne Parker, this last tackle, big up and under there. Sunning Steve Collins' eye, but Steve Collins absolutely, well, he's been doing that all year. Steve Collins, absolutely superb take there by Steve Collins. And it's Ty Fallon's front play at ball, he's brought down. Richard Chapman this time, he gives it to Carl Hall. Carl Hall will run it in. Carl Hall steps back inside. It's a penalty then to Featherstone Rovers. Quite rightly so there. Carl Hall had no way of getting that play at ball, trying to get up quickly, but Wayne Parker that time just clinging to his heels. So that kick by Ty Fallon just slices off his boot. Great kick there by Ty Fallon, but Featherstone Rovers on the attack. Rovers in a little bit of a muddle at the moment, just move's not coming up at the moment. This is Chico Jackson who steps back inside, shrugs one man off. That's a good run by Chico Jackson. So Richard Chapman then, that ball goes nowhere. Picked up well though by Jamie Coventry that time, he's brought down. So Rovers just losing the conscience at the moment, they're just not. But Richard Slater tries to improve things by going on a good run there. That's a good run by Richard Slater. Richard Chapman then to Neil Lowe throws it on me, then comes back inside. So it's last tackle then for Featherstone Rovers. It's back to Ty Fallon. Ty Fallon's under a bit of pressure, but he gets that ball away, big up and under. That's good. That's a good take though there by Richard Smith underneath that ball. Good rugby league that by LKR, and this is Mike Fletcher coming away. He's brought down. Been with LKR, of course, as years as Mike Fletcher, a moment for LKR today. This is Richard Smith from action half-back. He's brought down. Stanley Jean then. Stanley Jean will look for a gap. Stanley Jean, but that's good tackling by Rovers. Well, going out wrong with that tackle there by Featherstone Rovers, but crowd incensed, and referee, of course, Mr. Bates, just as he did when we were down here a couple of weeks ago, listens to LKR crowd and they get a penalty. Well, in my view, Mr. Bates shouldn't even be refereeing this game this afternoon. He's absolutely, I don't like to commentate on referees too much, but he's really weak. And that just proves it there. He weren't going to give a decision there until LKR crowd called for it, and then he just blew up straight away. Well, it really does get my blood boiling, just that kind of decision there. The referees in this game, he should be professional enough to block all the crowd out of his mind and see what goes on, and never mind, it's handed down out of a charge from that resulting penalty. Mr. Bates once again pulling Featherstone Rovers up that time for offside. Alex Thompson on a run, Alex Thompson. Handed down at this time, and handed down at to run it in, he's brought down. So Paul Fletcher on a run. Still going Paul Fletcher, that's a good run by Paul Fletcher, LKR second row man. He's brought down. So Mike Dixon. Once again, crowd call for a penalty. This time, notes given, which has surprised me. But Stanley Jean running out wide, back inside to Chris Charles. Offloading ball. That's good defence by Featherstone Rovers, but we're under pressure here. Stanley Jean at play at ball, looking for a gap out wide to Mike Fletcher, then it comes to Rob Danby. Superb tackling by Danny Baker though, excellent tackling there by Rovers second row man, that's Andover. Superb tackling by, Danny Baker playing at centre of course. But defences, but from both sides at the moment, has been excellent. Stuart Dickens looking for a gap. So Chico Jackson on a run, Chico Jackson spinning round, he's brought down though. Richard Chapman looking for a gap, he straightens up as Richard Chapman, but that's good tackling once again by LKR. Chris Charles in at tackle that time, so Gary Price, he'll run it in. Richard Chapman, then it goes back to Ty Fallons, that kick downfield by Ty Fallons, but once again there, Wayne Parker in perfect position to run this ball back. Gets almost to halfway line before he's brought down. Keith Beecham once again running this ball in. Stanley Jean, that's going to follow to Andy Smith. Andy Smith's brought down. So Chris Charles offloaded there to Stanley Jean. Stanley Jean gap out wide here, but that's good tackling, but Stanley Jean almost gets away from Sean Ewing, but Sean Ewing just pins him to the floor. This is okay, on the attack again then. Penalty to Rovers for offside. Penalty to OKR that time for offside, so this probably will be the first points on the board for OKR. OKR, to be fair, I think we've been the best team so far, but Featherstone Rovers have tackled everything OKR's put on them at the moment, and I think nice hot sunny day like this, I think Rovers will be pretty happy. They've got a lot of youngsters inside of Featherstone Rovers. Rebounds off post then. That's a knock on though against Richard Slater. Off the post, looked like it might have gone back, but referee Mr. Bates there pulls Featherstone Rovers up for a knock on, so that puts Featherstone Rovers under pressure once again. Wayne Parker to feed this scrum. Comes to Mike Fletcher, then he gives it to Stanley Jean. Stanley Jean stops in midfield. That's good tackling by Steve Collins. Comes away with ball. Super play by Steve Collins. One-on-one tackling, rip ball away. That's quite rightly so. Superb. And at last, referee Mr. Bates had decided to give OKR offside, which was something he might have learnt his lesson from a couple of weeks ago, and he decided that there's two sides in this game. There's two sets of supporters, and for once, don't listen to Featherstone Rovers supporters, which is fair dues, because it's OKR fans scream for everything, and they usually get everything down here at New Craven Park, and it's Chico Jackson on a run. Stuart Dickens runs, he strains it up to Stuart Dickens, he's brought down. Richard Chapman then back inside to Neil Lowe. So Ty Fallons back inside to Steve Collins. Steve Collins looks to skip away. Steve Collins to Ty Fallons to Gary Price to Sean Ewing. Sean Ewing back inside to Carroll! And Carroll scores the first try for Featherstone Rovers. And that was created there by Steve Collins. He got that ball, knocked a couple of men off. Kept the ball alive, give it to Ty Fallons, he threw it out to Gary Price. Gary Price to Sean Ewing. Sean Ewing there just took 2 minute tackle. He had Carlo on outside, and Carlo steams over for Rovers' first try. Featherstone Rovers 4, OKR 0.
I get carried away. I like the commentary with Stanley Jean out.
So Richard Chapman then from a touchline. Difficult kick for Richard Chapman. Looks like Christopher Covert goal kicking again from Ty Fallons this week. So Richard Chapman then from this touchline. Texas Times Richard Chapman. That's an absolutely beautiful one by Richard Chapman there. Well, if we're going to win this game and progress into playoff final, that's the kind of goal kicker we need by Richard Chapman. Rovers lead by 6 points to 0 then. Richard Chapman, I've been talking to him and his mum and dad for the last 2 weeks and they haven't been happy with his performances. But I'm sure he's pleased with banging Rovers 6-0 lead there with that kick front touchline. That's good tackling once again by Richard Chapman up quickly and helped out by Stuart Dickens, but OK then from this ball around then. Mike Dixon. That comes to Paul Fletcher. Paul Fletcher's brought down. Good tackling by Featherstone Rovers again. Chris Charles to Stanley Jean. Stanley Jean back inside there. There's a gap. Open up there, just an ankle tap, and Howard Hill's brought to ground. Stanley Jean then to Wayne Parker. Okay, looking to respond here. That ball looks a little forward there, and that time after that hit there, I know going about OKR fans giving decisions there to OKR, but that time I'm sure Mr Bates listened to Featherstone Rovers crowd that time. I might be biased, but I like to be fair at times, and I'm sure Rovers have got this, Featherstone Rovers have got this scrum because of the Featherstone Rovers crowd, so it's Rovers on the Featherstone Rovers on the attack with Carl Hall. So Richard Chapman then comes this side to Chico Jackson. Chico Jackson, excellent sidestep. Still going Chico Jackson, but ball unfortunately just pops out by Chico Jackson, so it's Richard Smith on a run. Wayne Parker this time, he's brought down. Andy Dannett on a run this time. OK, fans absolutely baying for an offside decision. It's Alex Thompson this time, he runs it in almost at 25-yard line. Chris Charles looks for a run. Gives it to number 3 here, Rob Danby. That's good tackling by Rovers. He's stopped in his tracks as Rob Danby. Keith Beecham then to Mike Dixon. To Mike Fletcher. Mike Fletcher runs it up, he's brought down. This is last tackling, Mike Dixon acting half back to Wayne Parker. Good long ball out here to Howard Hill back inside to Richard Smith. Ball pops back and referee says it's play on. It's still last tackle, it comes to Alex Thompson back to Stanley Jean, picked up by Mike Fletcher to Mike Dixon. Mike Dixon to number 12, Paul Fletcher, then it comes to number 3 there. That's superb tackling by Featherstone Rovers. Scrambling back, and once again, absolutely excellent defence by Featherstone Rovers. So Jamie Coventry, but that's good tackling by OKR. Richard Chapman throws on me. Looks for a pass, picked up by Gary Price. Gary Price will run this ball in. Richard Chapman then to Danny Baker. Danny Baker will look for a gap. Danny Baker looking to shrug me. That's a good run by Danny Baker. Richard Chapman then to Stuart Dickens. That's good run by Stuart Dickens. Referee this time spots something in the tackle from Keith Beecham. Right punch in there, it's play went down on floor. I think that time that was one of Mr Bates' decisions that time. I think he saw it himself. Penalty to Rovers then, and to keep saying Rovers, Featherstone Rovers that time, and it's Ty Fallons. Chico Jackson a run then, Chico Jackson. That's a good offload to Richard Chapman, well picked up by Richard Chapman. Richard Chapman still going, Richard Chapman still going. Ty Fallon's into Neil Lowe, Neil Lowe run it in himself. Been in fine form as Neil Lowe of late. He's been absolutely superb towards back end of the season. So Richard Slater. Richard Chapman again then, Rovers. Good ball out to Carlo. Carlo will look to check his wingman on, but that's good tackling by LKR. Excellent tackling by LKR is that. Carlo were all isolated there on that right hand side of the pitch, and we did a good job on Carlo. Carlo looked to use his strength, but that time LKR got over in numbers, and we did a good job in dragging Carlo over that touchline. So Stanley Jean from that scrum, he's brought down then. Alex Thompson, he'll run it in with Alex Thompson. Okay, our fans are absolutely baying for an offside, really are. So it's Chris Charles, and when he gets to halfway line, he's brought down. So Mike Fletcher this time throws him, and that's a good offload, but that's excellent tackling by Rovers once again. Skipper Sean Irwin there, leading example. Superb tackle by Sean Irwin. That ball, and Steve Collins has scrambled back, but now Steve Collins, that's ball. Steve Collins will look to get it outside of Wayne Parker, but that's good tackling by Wayne Parker. Well, he hasn't been fit all year at Wayne Parker, but he started this game well, as if he's ready for this game in Rugby League. He's had a good first half as Wayne Parker, plenty of effort into it. So Jamie Coventry from Maxon half back, he's brought down. Richard Chapman then to Richard Slater. So this is Gary Price this time. Gary Price runs it in hard. That's good running by Gary Price. So Stuart Dickens, that's good tackling by LKR though that time. Excellent tackling by LKR. This is last tackling, and Ty Fallon's that little chip through there. I think that's going to be a little bit too far there by Ty Fallon's that time, and it'll be an LKR drop out, tap on the own 25-yard line. But I'm sure at this stage of the game, Featherstone Rovers will be delighted to be 6-0 up, because it's been a tight game. I'm sure Featherstone Rovers will take every point what's going to them. And they've took the chance of that one chance there by Carlo, and Carlo took it. So Andy Dannett gets to halfway line. He's brought down by Richard Chapman. Stanley Jean then looking for a gap. He's brought down. So Mike Fletcher, he'll skip, he'll look for a gap. Good play by Mike Fletcher, he's brought down. This is last tackle then for OKR. It's Wayne Parker, he steps back inside, a little chip throw by Wayne Parker, but perfect position once again by Steve Collins. In fact, it was Ty Fallon's that time. Plate ball picked up by Danny Baker, good ball to Carl Pratt. Carl Pratt on a run, Carl Pratt stepping back inside, Carl Pratt still going. That's good running by Carl Pratt. Ty Fallon's on a run, back to Steve Collins to Sean Irwin trying to drag men off, but he's brought down. Richard Slater then stepping back inside. Richard Chapman then to Carlo. Carlo bounces off one man, Carlo goes straight back in, that's good running by Carlo. To 25-yard line, he's brought down. Richard Chapman then to Ty Fallon's. Ty Fallon's that. Up and under, Mike Fletcher underneath this. Taken by Steve Collins! And Steve Collins there. Got above Mike Fletcher. Come down with ball and just flopped over LKR try line. To put Featherstone Rovers further in front. Featherstone Rovers 10, OKR 0. So it's Richard Chapman then with his conversion then. Strikes it well, no problems for Richard Chapman, so Featherstone Rovers lead this game by 12 points to 0. So game back underway again then with Paul Fletcher that time, he's brought down. Stanley Jean then. And that time it was Richard Smith off his wing to try and help OKR out that time. Mike Dixon looks for a gap from Acton half-back, but he's brought down. Chris Charles, he'll straighten up. Chris Charles knocks one man off. Goes back inside and then he tries to offload it to Paul Fletcher, but that's a knock-on, so the moment not going right for OKR at the moment, everything going for Featherstone Rovers, which I'm glad to see at the moment. So Richard Slater then to run that ball in. So Jamie Coventry offloads it to Neil Lowe. Neil Lowe will look for a gap. Good tackling that bad time though by LKR. And Danny Baker from Acton half-back. Danny Baker tries to swivel around, knock men off, but that time LKR up to task. Good tackling by LKR. Chico Jackson to Stuart Dickens. Stuart Dickens gets over that 25-yard line. So Gary Price going for post. Gary Price, he's brought down. This is last tackle then. Is it worth a drop goal then at this stage? Back to Ty Fallon. Ty Fallon sets himself up. That time though, just goes to right hand side of that post, but good idea by Ty Fallon's. Featherstone Rovers in command and 10-0 up. Good idea by Ty Fallon's elite game going for drop. But fortunately for Featherstone Rovers that time just drifts wide. Mike Fletcher then gets his game underway with that run then. He's brought down. Mike Dixon runs into Richard Slater. This is Alex Thompson then on a run. He's brought down. Andy Danick gets over halfway line. He's brought down. And this is Paul Fletcher. That's a good run by Paul Fletcher. He's brought down then. So Wayne Parker then, this up and under. Well, that's a mistake by Rovers. Penalty for Featherstone Rovers. OKR playing offside. Referee Mr. Bates saying that OKR man went behind the kicker at that play of the ball, so Ty Fallon's a touch. So play will resume just on that Featherstone Rovers 25-yard line. It's Neil Lowe from Acton half-back. First drive, sorry, Neil Lowe on that first drive. Richard Chapman then to Chico Jackson. Chico Jackson, that's a bad mistake by Chico Jackson. Puts pressure back on Featherstone Rovers at the moment. Wayne Parks to feed this scrum. Comes out to Mike Fletcher. Mike Fletcher will step back inside, gets away. Mike Fletcher still going. So Mike Dixon, he gives it to Alex Thompson. Okay, on the attack here, looking there for their first points in this game. So Mike Dixon gives it to number 11 there, Andy Smith. Andy Smith's brought down. Andy done it, but that's a knock-on. Andy done it on full pelt here, but Andy done it knocking on, and that's once again down to Featherstone Rovers tackling. They've been absolutely superb so far. Carrying on from where we left off last week at Dewsbury. Superb defence at the moment by Featherstone Rovers. Just pray to God that we can keep this up. So it's Sean Irwin out there. He's brought down. So Carlisle acting half-back. Carlisle will have a run himself. Carlisle will look for a gap. Because use his strength, but okay, once again up quickly. So Neil Lowe this time, but that's once again good tackling by LKR. So Chico Jackson looking to make amends for his knock-on. And he's made it with that run there. That's superb running by Chico Jackson. Richard Chapman then sees a gap from Acton half-back. Richard Chapman, that's good running by Richard Chapman. Takes play over halfway line. It's back to Ty Fallons. Ty Fallons sees a gap. Ty Fallons kicks that ball over top. Mike Fletcher in good position there. He'll run this back for OKR. Throws it on, he runs it back. Ball comes to Ty Fallons. Back inside to Richard Slater! Richard Slater scores for Featherstone Rovers. Well, that kick by Ty Fallons looked like more nothing on. Mike Fletcher picked that ball up through it. What for him's a silly pass. He should know better at this level, Mike Fletcher. Mistake, and it run loose to Featherstone Rovers. Ty Fallons just offloaded it to Richard Slater, and Richard Slater shrugged the tackle off there to go over for Featherstone Rovers' third try of this game. Featherstone Rovers 14, OKR 0. So Richard Chapman then, man that started me, thanks to him, he's giving it a right score. It's 16-0, of course. Chapman's converted 2 tries. Hopefully this is going to be third, so Richard Chapman. That's a good kick by Richard Chapman, so Rovers then. Featherstone, that is, they move further in the lead. Rovers 8, Featherstone Rovers 18, OKR 0. So Ty Fallons then gets this game underway again with that deep kick. Safely caught there by LKR, and I think it's Paul Fletcher to run it back. That's a knock-on, so once again Featherstone Rovers get this Robert Green bounce up ball once again. Eric's just said about a minute to go now, so be sensible now to go for a drop goal. It'd be a sensible idea at the moment. Ty Fallon's back inside to Richard Slater, to Jamie Coventry, to Neil Lowe. Neil Lowe looking to shrug men off. Maybe it's worth 1 pointer now. Catch him by surprise. Danny Baker from acting half back. Richard Chapman comes this side. Well, to me, that's stupid play by Richard Chapman. It should have been a back to Ty Fallon shot drop goal. There's only moments remaining in this game, in this first half. One point's better than nothing, but okay, back on attack with Stanley Jean. That's absolutely excellent tackling, that. Sean Ewing once again. Really active for Stanley Jean, a sniff so far at Sean Ewing. It's been absolutely superb defence by Sean Ewing. It's Chris Charles offloading it out wide. Once again, good tackling back inside. That's another knock on there by OKR. Once again, though, it's down to Featherstone Rovers' defence. Absolutely superb. Sliding defence there, we just didn't panic. That's our time in Featherstone Rovers. And they've been an absolutely massive stride towards that grand final in this first half performance. Rovers winning 18-0. Tries by Steve Collins, Carl Hall and Richard Slater. 3 goals by Richard Chapman. And Featherstone Rovers' tackling performance in this first half has been first class. Featherstone Rovers 18, OKR 0. That's the half-time score.
Well played, lads!
Both sides making their way onto this pitch for the second half. Rovers 40 minutes from excellent rugby league and then the final. Absolutely unbelievable after the season we've had. Around no changes for Featherstone at half time then. 40 minutes of hard graft, hard tackling and Featherstone Rovers in the final. That's all it needs. Come on lads, 40 minutes, I'm with you. And I'm sure all them Featherstone Rovers fans on that far hand side are also with you. As Ty Fallon gets this game underway and it's caught by Stanley Jean. He'll offload it. I think that's Chris Kitchen on. Is that an over substitution there? I think Chris Kitchen will caught that ball. Well, this is Andy Dannett. Andy Dannett on a run. That's good running by Andy Dannett. It's a penalty against Featherstone Rovers. Stuart Dickens holding Andy Dannett down. That's a bad start to first half Featherstone, second half Featherstone Rovers. And this is Alex Thompson on a run. Alex Thompson. He's brought down. So Andy Dannett, ball pops out, comes back. Well, referee says that went backwards. Well, and I can say that went backwards there. Andy Dannett, well, obviously forward motion there, but referee said play on. Rob Danby going foot line, so OKR under, putting Featherstone Rovers under pressure really in this second half. Stanley Jean comes out to number 16 here, Lee Sibley, he's going foot line, he's brought down. So Chris Kitchen to Andy Dannett looking to get that ball down, Andy Dannett held up, Andy Dannett looking to get that ball down. Rovers just held him up short, this is last tackle. Crossfield kick there. Steve Collins knocks on, it's going to be picked up. Back to Mike Fletcher, back to Chris Charles, back inside to Lee Sibley. That's back to one, another 6 to go for OKR. Mike Dixon back inside to Alex Thompson. That's an excellent start for OKR for the second half. And for once, Featherstone Rovers' defensive work there didn't come off. And Alex Thompson crashes under that post. Featherstone Rovers 18, OKR 4. So Mike Fletcher adds over extras. Featherstone Rovers then, they'll still lead this game by 18 points to 6. So that's probably the worst possible start to this second half for Featherstone Rovers. I see Stuart Dickens leaving pitch. Just trying to see who's replaced by. I think it's Mickey Clarkson, so Mickey Clarkson for Stuart Dickens. So Mike Fletcher with that kick-off. Taken by Ty Fallons, gives it to Neil Lowe. Neil Lowe will run this ball in, but good tackling by LKR is that. So Danny Baker goes blindside. Danny Baker sees the gap. Good running by Danny Baker, but he's brought down. So Richard Chapman, he'll run it in. Richard Chapman looking for support. He's brought down. Penalty this time for Featherstone Rovers. Hold it down on Richard Chapman. So that's Featherstone Rovers just need to settle down here. Conceded an early try against LKR, so we just need to settle themselves down. I think sensible thing to do at the moment is if we're getting anywhere near LKR 25 is drop that goal, get that 1 pointer over. Richard Chapman then to Mickey Clarkson. Mickey Clarkson runs it in. Richard Chapman then back inside to Gary Price. Gary Price swivels around. Gary Price on a run. Richard Chapman then to Ty Fallons again to Sean Irwin. Sean Irwin going for line. He's brought down. So Ty Fallons sees a gap. Ty Fallons to Jamie Coventry. Jamie Coventry sees a gap. He's brought down. Richard Chapman! Richard Chapman on the sticks for a try for Featherstone Rovers. Well, LKR come out in second half. They scored a try and it looked like LKR might get themselves back into this game. But Rovers, the Featherstone Rovers, Richard Chapman from acting half-back, threw a dummy, Stimp took him over. I'm really chuffed for Richard Chapman because I think he's been down and out of his last two performances over the last 2 weeks in playoffs, but he's made up for it with that try today. Featherstone Rovers 22, LKR 6. Chico Jackson leaving pitch for a breather and Hassan Amora coming on. And so Richard Chapman then. Can I tag on the extras? Easy kick for Richard Chapman, but no problems for Chappie. Rovers lead this game. Featherstone Rovers 24, LKR 6. And I'm really chuffed for Richard. I really am chuffed for Richard Chapman because really nice lad. Featherstone Rovers through and through. Richard Chapman, absolutely chuffed for him. Those Featherstone Rovers fans on that far hand side of pitch really making a racket today at LKR. I was amongst them last week at Dewsbury, going into a video, and you know, it was like old times, it really was. So we're always about 35 minutes, they can just keep this tackling up. So Richard Smith, I'm okay, probably looking for a penalty here. So it's Alex Thompson on a run. He's brought down, try to score Alex Thompson. Wayne Parker, Stanley Jean. Ball out wide to number 15, Chris Kitchen. Chris Kitchen's brought down. Offloading it ball out to Richard Smith, but Richard Smith just couldn't control that ball. That's a knock on. I just listened to this support, you know, over at far side at pitch. You know, it takes me back about 4 years, does this, before Super League. This is what Featherstone Rovers is all about. It's Mickey Clarkson on, he's brought down. Danny Baker then. Shrugs one man off to Cal Pratt. Cal Pratt steps back inside to Asamoah. Asamoah will straighten this up. Asamoah runs it in. He's brought down. Ty Fallons then. Ty Fallons throws him. He goes himself. Ty Fallons is brought down. Richard Chapman, he takes it on himself. Richard Chapman sees a gap. He's brought down. Takes play inside LKR's 25-yard line to Ty Fallons. Ty Fallons looks for drop goal. Ty Fallons with drop goal. That's sensible play by Ty Fallons. So Featherstone Rovers increase the lead. Featherstone Rovers 25, LKR 6. That's sensible by Ty Fallons. I can see Steve Collins on pitch at the moment saying calm down. But once again, that's a port there over that far side and side of pitch. Ty Fallons with that kick off then. Stanley Jane catches it. So OKR trying to keep this ball alive with Lee Sibberry this time coming through. Keith Beecham from Axon half-back, he's brought down. Stanley Jean then. He runs it in. Stanley Jean really out of the sniff so far. He's brought, that's good tackling by Asamoah. Wayne Parker then, that crossfield kick, looking to catch Rovers napping. But Ty Fallon scrambles over well, he picks up that ball, he sees a gap. Good ball to Cal Pratt. Cal Pratt on a run, Cal Pratt just ankle tap there, and manages to stop in touch. Well, referees give a scrum down here. Ty Fallon, ref, touch shows on my far hand side, it put his flag up, but it's a scrum down to OKR. And it's number 3 here, Rob Danby to run it in, he's brought down. Alex Thompson, he runs it in. Mike Dixon to Paul Fletcher, so can Rovers just keep him out here. Mike Dixon again to Wayne Parker, he offloads it to Chris Charles going for line for once. Featherstone Rovers missing tackles here. Mike Dixon balls out to Rob Danby, then it comes to Keith Beecham. That's good tackling that time by Rovers. Wayne Parker, that crossfield kick. Carlo under pressure, Carlo. That's going to be a knock on there against OKR. But that's danger for Featherstone Rovers that time. Chris Charles avoiding Rovers tackles that time. For first time Featherstone Rovers, I think, just mixing a couple of tackles as Chris Charles went through, and that stretched Featherstone Rovers. So I said a moment, just try and settle things down for Featherstone Rovers. We've done all the hard work, we just need to run straight and just settle things down. It's Carlo then. Good run by Carlo. Sean Ewing runs straight, he's brought down. Richard Chapman sees a gap, he runs it straight. So Neil Lowe runs it in. Neil Lowe spots a gap. Neil Lowe just dragged down there by his bootlaces, he's brought down. Richard Chapman to Ty Fallons. Ty Fallons steps back inside. Ty Fallons manages to get that kick in. It really goes nowhere though. It's picked up by Richard Slater. Richard Slater. Crossfield kick. Cal Pratt onto that. Cal Pratt knocks him out. Cal Pratt scores for Featherstone Rovers. That is absolutely superb by that youngster. Well, Cal Pratt to me just gets better and better. There's no stopping this lad. Crossfield kick by Richard Slater. Cal Pratt plucked it out here, shrugged the man off. We're not outside, and he's in to put Featherstone Rovers favourite in the lead. Featherstone Rovers 28, OKR 4. 29, sorry. I bet you're enjoying this video. Well, Cal Pratt, I think he's only about, still only 18 years old, and well, Paul Newell have played down here. He brackets at first team, really does, and well, a lot of people are saying that he's Cal Pratt as good as Paul Newell for his age. Well, I don't want to put weight on Cal Pratt's shoulders, but he's absolutely classy. Somewhat special is that youngster Cal Pratt. But pace, power, balance, he can tackle, ball handling skills. Richard Chapman from touchline, and Chappie's put it over. Richard Chapman, well, he's having a beauty from goal kicking today, is Richard Chapman. And he goes to Featherstone Rovers fans, and he absolutely loves it, does Richard Chapman. Featherstone Rovers 31, OKR 6. Well, I can see OKR fans leaving in droves at the moment. This is what Featherstone Rovers is all about. Can they keep it up? Superb tackling once again. It's a joy to commentate on this, it really is. That's another mistake by OKR. And this really is absolutely superb by Featherstone Rovers. The man who's going to take credit for this though is Mr. Steve Sims. He's absolutely, in my book anyway, he's absolutely first class coach. When Rovers win, when it went going well for Featherstone Rovers early in its season, he didn't panic. Neither did Featherstone Rovers board. There was George Mann flying about, Lee Hansen flying about, but Rovers didn't panic. They knew what they could afford this board at Featherstone Rovers, and they didn't throw stupid money about. They've stuck with these Featherstone Rovers players, and this is what the loyalty is. As Ty Fallon's got spotline, just dealt short as Ty Fallon's. Carlo sees a gap. Carlo going himself, he's brought down. Ty Fallon's then back to Asanomona. Asanomona straightens up, ducking under tackles. Asanomona going foot line. Asanomona still going, getting on legs pumping. Ty Fallon's back inside to Richard Slater. Richard Slater puts his head down, he goes foot line, but that time OKR tackling well. Ty Fallon's popping ball up, gets ball away to Steve Collins. Steve Collins, Neil Lowe, that kick through by Neil Lowe. And it's Cal Pratt! Cal Pratt again! This time, once again, Cal Pratt! And then best mates there, Neil Lowe and Cal Pratt. Combined in that time. And Cal Pratt pounced on that ball from his kick by one of his best mates, Neil Lowe, and Cal Pratt dived on it. Featherstone Rovers favourite lead. Featherstone Rovers 35, OKR 6.
Can't wait for the phone in on radio on the side. We get all the old fans ringing in.
So that time for Richard Chapman, just fades with goal kick. But I'm sure we can forgive Richard Chapman for that, because that's his first and his kick missed this afternoon. In Featherstone Rovers 35, OKR 6. Well, I don't mind doing it commentating, but I wish I were in the middle of that crowd there this afternoon, I really do. It was absolutely buzzing. Featherstone Rovers fans singing going up well. I'm sure Mr. Lindsay and Chris Casely and rest of the Coronas will have something to say about that, but we deserve to be in that top flight, we do. We deserve it. We've got passion, we've got art. Everything what Rugby League stands for is this club, Featherstone Rovers, in my view.
Chapman's been key.
Good tackling once again by Fett, but this time we offload ball to Keith Beecham. Keith Beecham on a run. Keep putting gap. Well, it really does make me. Just fills me out with joy, does this performance by Featherstone Rovers at the moment. Long ball out, Richard Smith. Knock on, picked up by Richard Slater. Richard Slater will just run it back. Sean Irwin goes on blind side. Richard Slater again to Hassan Amoni. So this is Carlisle, another rampaging run. Well, you're going about Steve Sim being a good coach, but you can't take it away from Kevin Hobbs as well as assistant. He's coached this side as Kevin Hobbs. Featherstone bloke, of course, and you've got to give credit to Kevin Hobbs as well. Richard Chapman sees another gap from acting half-back. Richard Chapman, is he over again? Richard Chapman is over again! Richard Chapman from acting half-back again! Well, it's absolutely brilliant, is this? It gets better and better. Richard Chapman from acting half-back and literally just saw a gap, and that's the end of the story. Chappie's second at day. Featherstone Rovers go further in lead. Featherstone Rovers 39, OKR 6. Featherstone Rovers are absolutely in command here. It's Richard Chapman to under post again. It should be no problem, so Richard Chapman. Under post, there it goes. Featherstone Rovers 40 and OKR 6. Featherstone Rovers really well. What more can you say about this club? Small club, got demoted, not relegated, demoted a couple of years ago in Super League were formed, and we've just, our core supporters want a pat on back for staying with this club, because we've been through doldrums, we've got beat against sides that we've never usually get beat, usually whooping before. But okay, this time on an attack, and they're stuck by it, and well, them supporters want a pat on back, because we are the creative Featherstone Rovers, we really are. Wayne Parker, long ball out to Mike Fletcher. Mike Fletcher turns back inside. But once again, Featherstone Rovers defence is up to scratch. Wayne Parker. Crossfield kick by him, up and under. back to Mickey Clarkson, and Mickey Clarkson runs it back, so Rovers back in possession. Neil Lowe to run it in again. So Steve Collins stepped back inside. It's been an excellent signing of Steve Collins, of course. Absolutely superb this year for Featherstone Rovers. Steve Collins, one of the most consistent players it is. And there's that lad there, Richard Slater, a couple of injury problems, but... And Carl Hall offloaded there to Neil Lowe. Neil Lowe runs it in himself. That time's good tackling though, but Neil Lowe gets ball away back to Ty Fallons. Ty Fallons to Carl Hall just slips down, then it comes to Asamoah. Asamoah will probably just drive this ball in. Now he gets it away to Ty Fallons, and it comes to Neil Lowe. Neil Lowe going himself. Neil Lowe still going, just held short. Neil Lowe. Once again, excellent ball handling by Rovers. But Neil Lowe, I think, just took a knock that time in that tackle. It looks like a back injury for Neil Lowe, so... Steve Dolan, I think he'll be waiting to come on for Featherstone Rovers. Well, I hope it's not too serious, because Neil Lowe deserves to play in this final next week. If Featherstone Rovers get there, remember, there's still down about 15 minutes to go in this game, and Neil Lowe just walks to the side. I think Steve Dolan coming on, so kick through here, and it's all on, is it? Finally it bounces back to Chris Charles, and Chris Charles will get talent on goal area, but Mr. Referee, Mr. Alan Bates that time, I think quite rightly so really. I think we're a little knock on there by Featherstone Rovers, and he brings play back for that knock on. It'll be scrum down OKR's feed. I'm just looking at Neil Lowe now behind back at sticks. I think he's alright. I think he's just a little bit of a bang. Not think it's out too serious. I think he'll... If Rovers get that far, I think he'll be there next year as this kick through. Picked up by Ty Fallons, and Ty Fallons on a run. Steve Dolan, his first touch up ball, he runs it and he's brought down low. Steve Dolan. So it's Steve Collins looking to duck under tacklers. He's brought down though. Another change happening. I think Paddy Hanley's coming on for Jamie Coventry. Jamie Coventry's done well. He's done absolutely nothing wrong. Stuart Dickens halfway through. In fact, it's Gary Price, sorry. To Steve Collins. Steve Collins to Danny Baker. Danny Baker flying through. Danny Baker still going. Danny Baker on took ball with speed there. He's finally brought down Richard Chapman then. Richard Chapman. Good to take men on. So Ty Fallons, that little chip through by Ty Fallons. Wayne Parker scurries back for this, he offloads it. That's good tackling once again by Featherstone Rovers. That's a knock on, so... But that comes down to Featherstone Rovers tackling. It creates this pressure, and it's a pressure I'm sorry for the OKR fans, we haven't been able to live with today. It's been absolutely awesome by Featherstone Rovers, his tackling this afternoon. And just listen at that crowd over that far hand side, absolutely superb. It's just like the good old days, it really is. To come down to New Craven Park and put 41 past OKR is absolutely, well, you'd have to say much more than that. Sean Hill in this front scrum. Danny Baker acting half back line. Danny Baker, he wants to try as Danny Baker. Will Danny Baker get a try? He's just held short. OKR managed to drag him back. Back inside to Asamoah. Richard Chapman acting half back then. Long ball out to Carlo. Carlo step back inside. Carlo steps back inside again. Carlo still going this time. Okay, managed to bring him to the ground. And Keith Clarkson sees a gap here, runs it straight. So it's last tackle then. So Ty Fallons. Another drop goal by Ty Fallons. No problems for Ty Fallons. That's sensible again by Ty Fallons. Rovers will get ball back from that. Featherstone Rovers 4-2 to OKR 6. And that drop goal is just typical of Featherstone Rovers display this afternoon. We've tackled absolutely brilliantly. And they've used their heads. We've took the right options at the right times. They've been absolutely superb this afternoon of Featherstone Rovers outfit. The confidence of this Featherstone Rovers team at the moment, it's absolutely unbelievable. Team spot kick off, and OKR fans at the moment absolutely leaving in droves at the moment, they really are. Stanley Jean then picks this ball up to Chris Charles. Chris Charles is brought down. Offloaded. Mike Dixon keeping this ball alive then. Keith Beecham spinning out of tackle, still going Keith Beecham, he's brought down. It's okay out at halfway line then. Wayne Parker to Stanley Jean, slipping it back inside to Chris Charles offloading it to Lee Sibley, then it comes to Alex Thompson offloads it to Wayne Parker. He offloads it to Chris Charles, good attack by OKR this time. Danny Baker managed to bring it to out there, and it's Mike Dixon to halfback, he gives it. And it comes to Daniel Brown, that kick through. So last tackle, Featherstone Rovers didn't make a play football, it comes to Lee Sibley, and then he gets away to Chris Charles that. Big up and under, Richard Slater under that, no problem by Richard Slater. Excellent catch by Rovers number 13, and Richard Slater's on an excellent game. Really, I couldn't pick a man at match out for Featherstone Rovers today, I really couldn't. Really, I couldn't pick a man at match out today for Featherstone Rovers if I try, because they've been absolutely magnificent. They've been a credit to Featherstone Rovers, they really have. But I'm sure there's going to be one hell at party in Clubhouse tonight. That's an owner from that first drive. He's finally brought down his Aston Ramona, Richard Chapman then. Richard Slater, he's brought down as Richard Slater. Richard Chapman to Gary Price looking to shrug men off. Ball pops out to Mike Dixon. Richard Smith, I think that's quite rightly so there. I don't think that ball pinched, I think Gary Price pinched it. So this ball back inside to Alex Thompson. It's another good game as Alex Thompson for OKR, number 10 big prop forward for OKR. I think he's been one of the best players for OKR. Stanley G's been well looked after this afternoon. So back into that scud hit there, but Chris Charles managed to get away, he's brought down though eventually. Wayne Parker. Little crossfield kick. Well taken by Carlo steps back inside, Carlo on a run. That's good run by Carlo, he's brought down. So Steve Collins then. He's brought down Steve Collins. So Sean Ewing on a run. Sean Ewing runs it and he's brought down. So Ty Fallons back inside to Paddy Hanley to Mickey Clarkson. Mickey Clarkson runs his ball in. He's brought down as Mickey Clarkson. So Paddy Hanley to Richard Chapman. Volley bounce off Gary Price. Accidental offside there by Gary Price. It'll be a scrum down to OKR. That support by Featherstone Rovers is absolutely tremendous this afternoon. We've made loads of noise all afternoon. We've really lifted Featherstone Rovers from the off. Once again, superb tackling. But OKR managed to get ball away this time to Mike Fletcher. Mike Fletcher, I bet it's disappointed today. It's Mike Fletcher long serving. OKR fullback is Mike Fletcher. Chris Charles runs it in. He offloads it, but once again that's a mistake picked up by Richard Chapman. And Ty Fallons to Danny Baker. Danny Baker looks outside his man, gives it to Steve Dooler. He's brought down though, that's good tackling by OKR. Richard Chapman then. So he's a gap at acting half back. Richard Chapman takes it over halfway line, he's brought down. Asanomona looking to get outside his man, but good tackling once again though by OKR. Ty Fallons sees a gap, Ty Fallons for over gap, Ty Fallons to Carl Pratt. Carl Pratt throws it back inside. Play wave back on, another 6 to go by Featherstone Rovers here. So Gary Price runs it in. What a season Gary Price has had. I can't remember, he's had a bad game this year, Gary Price. To Danny Baker, no stopping, Danny Baker! And that'll just finish things off for Featherstone Rovers this afternoon. Featherstone Rovers 46, OKR 6. And as Eric says, Danny Baker deserves that. Nothing less than what he deserves there, Danny Baker, because he's run hard all afternoon, he's tackled hard. And he's deserved that try, that Australian centre. So Featherstone Rovers 46, OKR 6. I know would have predicted this. Nobody would have predicted this at the start of play this afternoon. Featherstone Rovers have showed that they have one of the best teams in this league, and I'm sure next week at Wakefield they'll be wanting to show that they have the best team in this league. Gary Price leaving pitch, and Gary Price has been absolutely awesome this afternoon for Featherstone Rovers. He's a good lad, is Gary Price, absolutely excellent. As I say, I can't remember the last time I had a bad game for Featherstone Rovers, Gary Price. Richard Chapman then. No problems for Richard Chapman once again, he's got his goal kicking boots on now, that's Chappie. 7 goals saved for Richard Chapman this afternoon, that increases Rovers' lead even more. OKR 6, Rovers 30, Featherstone Rovers 48. So a little kick-off then by Featherstone Rovers, and that time it just don't quite come off, and it's going to be a penalty to OKR. That ball didn't go 10 metres, that's required. OKR's going to run this, and it'll be Alex Thompson to run it in, man at match. He's had a fine game. I picked him out about 5 minutes ago. He's had a superb game for OKR's Alex Thompson. Just Paul Scott to run it in, he's brought down. This is Daniel Brown running out wide, he's brought down though, it's Daniel Brown. Played at scrum half this year, Daniel Brown for OKR. This is Chris Charles. Once again, defence is superb, and referee spots a little knock on by Chris Charles. That was created by Richard Slater once again. Defence today has been absolutely unbelievable. And just listen to that crowd over there. Well, it's absolutely superb, is this? So Steve Collins on a run. Steve Collins going away. Steve Collins going all the way for Featherstone Rovers. No stopping Steve Collins. Got that ball from that scrum. Skipped to a tackler. And no LKR player could leave an hand on him. That takes it over to 52. 50 marks been broken at New Craven Park. Featherstone Rovers 52. LKR 6. Steve Collins second of the day, and that is absolutely awesome. Well, I've been nervous before the game. I've been nervous all week, but what have I got to be nervous about this super team we've got here at Featherstone Rovers? Absolutely awesome display. So Richard Chapman again from under post for Featherstone Rovers. No problem for Richard Chapman. Featherstone Rovers 54, LKR 6. So Ty Fallons gets this game underway again then. It's a penalty against Featherstone Rovers, against Chico Jackson that time, so it'll be Chris Charles to kick this to touch. And I believe Sky TV is doing commentating next week, so I don't think I'll be doing the commentating next week, which is good news for me because I can have a really good, excellent day next week. The grand final next week at Huddersfield, Featherstone Rovers against Wakefield. And really, Wakefield, they must be shaking in their boots watching this display this afternoon because they've been absolutely awesome. But this is okay on the attack. Well tackled by Richard Slater though. So Mike Dixon stepping back inside. Long ball out there to number 16, Lee Sibley, but he's brought down. Wayne Parker back inside to Alex Thompson, he's brought down. That's going to be a knock on this time. That'll be the handover because it was last tackle. So we can't be long left in this game now. And I think a 54 points to 6 scoreline really says it all. It really has been absolutely awesome by Featherstone Rovers. Danny Baker picking this ball up. Danny Baker from acting half back. Danny Baker on another gallop. He's been awesome as Danny Baker. He's been awesome today as Danny Baker, he really has. Richard Chapman to Steve Dooley. Steve Dooley, that's good tackling by LKR. And that's it! What a performance by Featherstone Rovers! 54 points to 6 the final score. And I'll just run through all the try scorers this afternoon. Steve Collins got 2 tries, Kyle Hall 1, Danny Baker 1, Carl Pratt 2, Richard Chapman 2, Richard Slater 1. Final score 54 points to 6. And just look at that crowd over there. That is Featherstone Rovers. They are back. And as the Featherstone Rovers players go over to clap the crowd, they are back in a big style. What an absolutely superb performance by Featherstone Rovers. But rugby league's hit this club hard over the last 4 years. We've had to put up with Mr. Lindsay and Mr. Casely slagging us up. We got demoted 4 years ago. And I think Mr. Lindsay, Mr. Casely, deep down in their hearts, I think we know that we deserve this. We deserve this. We don't care about how big Featherstone is or how big anything is. We just love this Featherstone Rovers club, and them spectators do as well. Them spectators, absolutely, we deserve this. We really do. We deserve it. As I say, we've lost to teams like Batley, Dewsbury, Rochdale over the last couple of years. Teams that we'd expect to wallop the previous years. But we haven't got disheartened. I can remember when we got hammered against Rochdale at home early on in the season. But then Featherstone Rovers fans, majority, they haven't lost heart. And they deserve a lot of credit. And so does this team of Featherstone Rovers. And Steve Sims and Kevin Hobbs. And basically everybody down there, they deserve this. We deserve this, we do, we really do. And them players really have been an absolute credit to Featherstone Rovers. They really have. And to walk down here back towards the players' tunnel, just clap them last adoring Rovers fans off behind them sticks, and well, we're going to have a party tonight at this clubhouse, I think. Working tomorrow, but I couldn't give a damn. I really could. Really, it must go down as one of the happiest days of my life, this. And this team have been absolutely world class. They have been absolutely superb. There ain't much more I can say about this Featherstone Rovers team. And in fact, I'm going to have a clap myself. Absolutely superb. So I'll just bid you farewell then from me. No Craven Park then. I'll leave you with final score then. Featherstone Rovers. After all we've been through, and I can see Davy Kimmel down there, and Davy Kimmel, he's played a major part in it as well. I'll just mention him before I leave this commentating. Davy Kimmel's played a major part in this success. You can just see him limping off. He'll be disappointed with not being able to play in final, but he'll be delighted to do with this. So from New Craven Park, then Featherstone Rovers in the grand final. We've demolished Hull KR this afternoon by 56 points to 6.